Hello, everyone. So let's have a bit of a discussion about psychokinesis. So what is psychokinesis? Psychokinesis is an umbrella term. It comes from the Greek psycho and kinesis, meaning the spirit or the soul, motion or manipulation, the mental ability to manipulate tangible matter. However, some state it is the causal influence of an organism on part of the physical world without any sort of physical interaction between the two. This umbrella term means psychokinesis is representative of all occurrences of behavior beyond that of tangible manipulation, but does not specifically apply to any one occurrence. Therefore, for each occurrence of manipulation, an individual name and definition or subtype is given. Now, where physics comes into play, physics has its own set of beliefs regarding psychokinesis, and they believe it's the influence over tangible matter with an intangible mind. They also study nanokinesis, which is the understanding and manipulation of subatomic particles. Both focus on manipulating the spatial positioning of matter on different construct levels. Now, in physics, they believe that the course of motion of events of an object or a set of particles cannot change without the interference of an exterior physical source. Imagine what happens when you pick up an object. Your brain sends commands to motor neurons inside of your brain to proceed with the motion, and a conversion of chemical potential energy turns into kinetic energy in order to make psychokinesis possible. Now, by the law of conservation of energy, energy cannot be created or destroyed. So, we're taking the conversion of your chemical potential energy and converting it into kinetic energy, creating kind of a force and a transfer of this kinetic energy onto the thing you are trying to move or energize. All right? Now, if we're not counting time along with this, then the expenditure of kinetic energy by the object becomes the same as if you had lifted the object directly with your hands. So in this realm, in the realm of physics, obviously they do believe that energy can be transferred, converted, altered, and then transferred into another object. And that's a very technical way to think of it, but a very accurate way to think of it. You are converting energy, you are manipulating it, you're affecting it by taking your own personal energy and putting it out. And it's hard to imagine this at the beginning, but as you get comfortable with the idea that psychokinesis is real and that we are mentally manipulating the world around us at all times, once you can really accept that, then the thought of moving an object should seem easy, simple, right? Nowadays, a limited cult type of knowledge of psychokinesis exists within popular culture, where groups and individuals use a misconceived idea of psychokinesis in an attempt to brag about a discovery of psychokinetic abilities. It's fake, nonetheless, a lot of fraud. If the theories to unlocking psychokinetic potential are true, then the actual execution of psychokinesis will be far more complicated than the popular culture perceives it to be. Now, is it possible to use psychokinesis on a piece of paper, a piece of foil, from a distance even? Is it possible to create motion without touching or moving an object in any way? Can it be proven that psychokinesis is that easy? Now, society's effect on current research. In the last 10 to 15 years, the credibility of psychokinesis as a scientific theory has diminished greatly because of the popularization of the superhero complex. Because of the resultant bad name created for psychokinesis, the funding and interest towards the scientific research side of things has diminished greatly. So that leaves a lot of people to have to figure this out on their own individually. However, with the onset of some scientific discoveries, such as nanotechnology and hyper-development, the issue of control over these ideas are being explained, potentially through psychokinetic means. In other words, in order to control the unstable nature of these developments, more than just a computer's mind is needed. Utilizing the variety and adaptability a human mind can offer just might be the only way of fully understanding, accepting, and making use of true psychokinesis. Now, on the one hand, the supposed mechanics for psychokinesis are far beyond the current capabilities of science. Furthermore, the technologies needed to implement these theories are but theories themselves. On the other hand, the science backing up many theories are quite sound. Furthermore, the issue of genetics has yet to be researched. If any given research poses influential, the future will tell us so much more. And it's really sad that, scientifically speaking, we haven't advanced to the point where this is something that is accepted, understood, and being taught openly. At this point, if you're interested in psychokinetics, you're going to have to do a lot of groundwork on your own. And that's a shame because along the way, it's very difficult to tell who to believe and who not to believe. And all the scientific research that is available requires the mind of a scholar. And you need to have several dictionaries next to you to get everything and remember what you're reading, at least for some of us, okay? And once you read as much of it as you can absorb, the answers and the fact of the matter and what psychokinesis is, it simplifies. That's what sucks. Why can't this information just be simply given, simply understood, and simply replicated? Most importantly, for the scientists out there who need replication to believe anything. Let's move on. So there are machines that are in development which are designed to assist in stages of energy transfer. One is the wireless energy transfer system. And they're hoping through machines they can obtain in full the energy needed to transfer telekinetics to a third-party object. But at this point, there are two major problems with wireless energy transfer. First off, for humans, for us, electrical energy is not compatible with us. This is why if you go touch a power pole, you will not be happy with it. Our output for motion is kinetic energy, so we would need an external energy converter with potential kinetic energy as the input in order for this process to take place. But during the transmission, the energy is in the wrong form to be used as a spatial or a space manipulator. So another converter would be needed in order for the kinetic output to take place. So putting a machine between you and the object seems a bit silly if the power to move an object exists within the individual human. Why do you need a machine? Well, you need the machine because you want to understand what kinetics are. And the best way to understand them is by being able to replicate and manipulate them, right? Let's move on. Now, the second problem is the hindrance of electrodynamic induction, the starting process to the energy transfer. Now, both the telekinetic, maybe it's a person, and the receiver of the telekinetic energy must share a mutual frequency in order for the electrical transmission to be picked up. Now, that little issue is an inconvenience from a human channeling point of view. But electrodynamic induction has its positives over other induction methods, like electrostatic. And I think if you've rubbed your feet across the floor enough times, you're probably not really interested in being zapped that way for any type of experiment or reasoning. Now, regarding the future, electrodynamic induction in a different context is already used within contactless smart cards. The idea of smart cards give credibility to a minimally adapted receiver of the telekinesis. See that? However, this still implies that it is assisted telekinesis rather than completely independent telekinesis. And the problem of energy conversion still remains. So when you put your card into the cash register, or when you're checking things out of a store, buying things, that little smart card, that with the little gold, or sometimes it's a silver little magnetic metal looking plate thing. This is the future, you guys. And they're already putting this on people's heads and bodies and making use of it, transferring thought, requests for behavior, energy. Now, there are huge medical benefits attached to the awareness of biological psychokinesis, or biokinesis, which is the ability to understand and control your own bodily functions, or sometimes someone else's. Subtypes such as cardiokinesis, which is the ability to control cardiovascular movement. Perhaps you've heard this in like some of the monks who can go up into the mountains and control the beat of their heart, how fast it goes, slow it down, speed it up. There's myokinesis, which is the ability to control and sustain muscle movement. Now, the good side of that is a human is fully aware of their bodily processes and are able to regulate them consciously. Contrary to the current way a primitive body works, a psychokinetically adept human will be able to adjust certain neuron flows, also known as neurokinesis, the ability to control mental processes within the brain, which was great if we could all do that, because it effectively removes the potential for illnesses, stress, scenario-induced strokes, heart attacks, as well as other bodily processes which occur from a biological irregularity. In short, we can cure ourselves. Stop heart attacks. Although a human will be in full control of their body within a consistent environment, the combination of biokinesis and neurokinesis cannot regulate the body from diseases such as cancer, as they have an exterior basis. Now, having said that, there lies, I believe this, the ability to affect the cells within one's body, to affect their growth and the way they replicate. There is a way to bring the body back to a normal condition. Now, this has to be from the mind of someone who truly understands this. There is a way, however, where a human can effectively recover from any body irregularity. There's vitakinesis, which is the ability to spontaneously regenerate yourself to what your ideal state of health should be. Vitakinesis, in short, is a system restore, kind of like a refresh of your body, where an imprint of how one's original body was, and any alteration to this imprint is manipulated. Okay? It's manipulated back to its more ideal state. Now, vitakinesis suggests that any injury or illness, including cancer, can be healed by the body's own healing intent. Now, a science-minded person or a scientist would say there's some problems with this. A human body is only capable of replacing so many cells. So regenerating every irregularity, you're essentially using up your body's finite resources. There's a limit. Because of this, vitakinesis could potentially limit your lifespan. Secondly, the effectiveness of regeneration relies on one's biological imprint. If brain damage has occurred, then the imprint perception may be altered, resulting in a damaged reconstruction. Now, this is physics that believes in this. Now, there are huge benefits that could be obtained by one of the first recorded psychokinetic occurrences, psychokinesis, which is the ability to analyze and supposedly manipulate probability fields. This can be done by using the human brain as a computer, taking in factors, scenarios, and variables that a computer cannot yet comprehend. Psychokinesis on a small scale can potentially analyze risk factors on construction and projects with great certainty. This would essentially limit any problems at any stage of an event. This is ideal, right? Now, on an even bigger scale, psychokinesis has the ability of assessing weather patterns and ultimately global warming, climate change, whatever you want to call it. Assessing the probability fields of each course of actions in terms of the CO2 levels and other relevant data will result in, for example, the net impact of each person to an end result. Now, this is where psychokinesis could be most advantageous, because instead of looking at stats and numbers, psychokinesis goes through the different scenarios, the different possibilities, and gives you the best one out of all that is possible. Now, warfare can be a great problem with psychokinesis utilized in a more violent way. I think we can all imagine some things. More so than ever, humans will become the greatest weapon in combat, using otherwise harmlessly perceived psychokinetic abilities. On a personal level, biokinesis and forms thereof, specifically speaking, manipulate and control anyone's bodily processes, albeit with greater difficulty, especially going to a third-party recipient. And because of this, if it was learned and taught to a really seriously high level, you could incapacitate somebody on a biological level. Now, in physics, they do have some concerns about stuff like that. And so far, the most fearsome implementation of extended psychokinesis is the potential for radiokinesis, which is the ability to utilize and optimize radiation and its frequency. The human mind can process optimum and hidden frequency levels at a more adaptable way, kind of like particle detectors. This, along with the ability to suppress any radioactive instability through the energy transfer process, means that someone could set up nuclear warheads safely and hidden to outside detection, as no digital signals would be being used. This isn't good. And I think we could all feel very comfortable with believing that if everyone was practicing psychokinesis, there would definitely be certain people in charge who might use that energy the wrong way. Right? It's possible. So, in conclusion, psychokinesis, human psychokinesis, is eventually going to be where we're going to be at. We are going to have to reach a point where we advance beyond the verbal communication that we exchange with each other. There is going to be a time where we're going to have to make greater use of our minds to get things done. This is our gift, it's our ability, and it exists within all of us. Psychokinesis. And the fact that physics studies this should make you a little more comfortable with studying it for yourself and the possibilities. Because if we don't, well, we can see what happens when we don't expand on our senses as human beings. We get things like artificial intelligence. And right now it's in a good place because artificial intelligence is still being scripted around a path of cause and effect. You do this, I do that. Okay? And that's good. That's good. It hasn't really grasped every aspect of human consciousness yet. But let's be realistic here. While it hasn't grasped consciousness, it is understanding and processing the world around it. And they only need to connect it to the internet to do that. So many ranges of emotions. And at this point in time, AI has advanced to the point where some of you guys, some of us are watching auto-intelligent content creators on YouTube. And the fact is, you can't even tell who's a real human or not. That's how far it's gotten. And I won't name channels, but you are looking at computer-generated images in some of these high-profile channels. Okay? I'll leave the experience of truth for you to figure out on an individual level, but the AI is getting smarter. Make no mistake about that. And then comes the psi phenomenon in 1942. Psi is thought of as the psychic force of thought to be manifested by the paranormal phenomena that compromises the subject matter of parapsychology. This generally refers to an interaction between the private mind and the public world, also known as ESP. Now, experiments were done, and they believe that 35% accuracy in ESP means good stuff. However, they did have some replication problems in this and kind of started to question people regarding it without probably taking a lot into account of having to put people on the dot, on the mark for doing things. Some people, like this in this realm, have something called performance anxiety, okay? In the late 19th century, there was a lot of non-experimental research, seances, ghost hunting, all types of stuff like that. And these things watered the pool and made it very easy to dismiss psychokinetic abilities. And we see these things to this day. If a woman says or a man says that they feel psychic energy or have it, you immediately dismiss that person as crazy or the doctor gives you medication. Okay? Now, it is believed that people who exhibit psychokinetic abilities or ESP have the ability to alter things, computer processes like random number generation. I disagree with this. My experience with this has been you can predict what the computer will do. I think that you're looking ahead, not altering the way a computer functions, because a computer has a written script, a scripted behavior. It doesn't suddenly learn how to adjust numbers. That's not something it learned. There was a script to that. So I don't believe a lot of the studies are really well thought out regarding PK. But that's just me. That's just me. No one has to believe me. But I think the low numbers that are seen in many studies for PK have a lot to do with bad environments, bad teachers, bad understanding of putting people on the spot to perform. I think a lot of that has to do with just basic performance anxiety, and thus you cannot create an environment for replication if the person who needs to replicate is afraid to do so. These are just thoughts to keep in mind. Okay? And do not forget, they've been studying this forever. It's been written about in different ways forever. Okay? Now, one more conclusion here. Let's not forget science, the medical industry, they're still learning the human body. So I don't think it's fair to immediately dismiss possibilities. People have been interested in psychokinesis for centuries, but believing in it became popular only in the end of the 19th century, at least that we are aware of based on texts. That doesn't mean civilizations before us did not practice this, okay? And there are many examples of psychokinesis that we hear about happening today, and we dismiss these things. We don't call it psychokinesis. We call it intuition. I felt it. I thought it. I woke up and it was just on my head. We all feel something, and we all have the ability to manipulate the world around us. If you are feeling bad or sad or unhappy, and you say only bad things are happening to me, and more bad stuff keeps coming, believe it or not, you are manipulating the environment. And on a mental level, you're calling more of it to you because that's your focus. So what else happens when we focus? Let's have a look at a famous psychokinetic individual most of us have never heard of, Nina Kulagina. Now, probably haven't heard of her because most of us are watching this from the US, but that's not where this woman was. So let's have a look at Nina Kulagina. So there it is, an intro to PK and TK, psychokinesis, telekinesis. I hope you've enjoyed this, and if you've never heard of this before and never considered it, I hope you will give it some consideration. Could you imagine going through life with 2 arms and 2 legs, but you really have like 1,000,000 arms, 1,000,000 legs, and your brain does things that are far beyond your imagination? Could you imagine that? Could you imagine living in a world where you never, at the very basic of it all, never had to get up and get a drink from the refrigerator or bring the remote control to you? It is of my opinion that we should have already been there, but somebody is keeping us, well, stunted. Someone out there is preventing our growth. We could say it's them. But truthfully, with free will, it's us. Let me know your thoughts on this, and more coming soon.